Well, welcome to the 2008 ATEC Symposium here in Newcastle, New South Wales, Australia. It's John Alwyn-Jones reporting for Travel Mole TV. It's quite unusual to be in a town like Newcastle or a city like Newcastle, which really hasn't got a great track record in terms of tourism in the past. But from what we've seen over the last 24 hours with the Backpacker Conference yesterday and walking around the city and dinner last night, this is a place in transformation and moving into becoming one of the really smart tourism destinations in New South Wales. So what's the ATEC Symposium all about? Well, the Australian Tourism Export Council is organising ATEC and export. You'd think it was about stuff going out of Australia, but think about it, this is about money coming into Australia, so technically in the financial world that's an export. But the ATEC Symposium, well, today they've got about 100 buyers here.
We have 1 minute, everybody. 1 minute remaining with this appointment.
And about 400 suppliers, okay? So whilst the Backpacker Conference was yesterday, they have a day of workshops today, and then 2 days of conferences after this. So inbound tourism, such a hot topic at the moment, with exchange rates having some impact on that, but still a vital part of the Australian economy. And hopefully out of today, there'll be some great business done, and also governments might start to begin to realise the value of the Australian economy. So I'm going to go for a wander around the workshop here, and we'll look forward to chatting with you later, and also with Matt Hingerty, the CEO of ATEC, and John King, the Chairman of ATEC, and also later on with Minister Matt Brown, the Minister for Tourism for New South Wales. Okay, well, it's always important to find the guys who actually make these things work, and after many years in tourism, it's been quite challenging, from my perspective, I suppose, that the ministers always take the credit and stuff like that. Well, I've just found the guy who's got the hand on the helm of an event like this, and I'm going to have a chat with Gary O'Riordan, who's Deputy Managing Director of the Australian Tourism Export Council. Well, Gary, you had a full head of hair, is that right, before you started this process?
Well, mate, events are a very challenging type of work, but it takes about 6 months to pull this together. Mm-hmm. So the team worked pretty much full-time preparing for this event.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So how many people? I mean, we heard that you've got about 100 buyers, is it?
Yeah, ITOs around that number. All up, there's about 570 people coming through the week. Okay. That includes the backpacking conference we ran yesterday. We had about 90 there. We have about 500 for the balance of the program, the conference sessions and the gala dinner and so on as well.
Isn't this a role normally that you see somebody like Tourism Australia or Tourism New South Wales doing? So where does this event fit into that sort of program of events?
Look, we've been around for about 36 years now, and it's a long-standing tradition for ATEC to bring together the inbound tour operators and the Australian product suppliers. And we run 2 national events every year, Symposium, of course, and Meeting Place. And the workshops, which we're experiencing here today, are probably what most members would consider their key benefit, is that opportunity to sell their product to the inbound operator. For the ITOs, it's all about sourcing new product for itineraries that they push back to the people they work with in the distribution channels overseas, so the wholesalers and the retailers.
Sure. So what's your message to members in terms of what they expect out of something like today when they come here? Are they actually going to do business, or is it about networking relationships?
Look, primarily it's all about making the contact, selling the product, finding out which markets ITOs are working with and whether there's the opportunity to do business. If there is, it's always about the follow-up after that. It's the rate negotiation and so on that will come after the event. But primarily today is all about making the contact, sourcing the business, and just seeing if there's an opportunity to build a business relationship.
And you clearly got a close working relationship with Tourism Australia and the state tourism organisations. So they represented here today as well?
Yeah, they're all here. All the states are here, and Tourism Australia as well. They're all actively involved in the workshops, promoting their destinations to the inbound operators as well. So we work very closely with them at all ATEC events, in fact. Yeah.
Do you think current exchange rate issues are sort of impacting on inbound tourism at all at the moment?
Look, I think it is. There's no doubt about that. I mean, if you've got a short period where the exchange rate goes up, you probably don't see much impact at all. But when sustained over a certain period of time, ultimately the pricing will change in the itineraries and the programs, and that will have some impact in the long run, and I think we're feeling it now.
Okay. But very positive though, and the sort of outcome of this conference, what are your objectives as one of the guys organising it? What do you want to see at the end?
Look, the conference the next 2 days is all about the future of tourism in this country. So, we're addressing trends in aviation, future of travel itself, just trying to get the message out to the members here, what's happening in the industry, so that they're better informed to make decisions about which inbound markets they should be targeting.
And Matt was talking yesterday about innovation in terms of tourism marketing, and you guys are launching a roadshow series, the first I think you've done ever overseas.
Yeah, well, since
South America?
The very early days of ITOA, as we were formerly known, going back 30 odd years. When they used to lead missions into market, before the days of the States and Tourism Australia doing it. So we're going back to those times. We're leading a mission in July this year to South America. We're taking around 20 odd of our members over there to try and drum up some business for Australia from a growth market. It's up 20% last year, so we want to capitalise on that.
Excellent. Well done. Yeah. Have a great day. Looks like a great turnout as well. So,
and
we're going to have a chat with a few people as we go around through the day. So, right, Gary Reardon, the man on the helm, and John Alwyn-Jones reporting for Travel Mole TV from the ATEC Symposium in Newcastle, New South Wales, Australia. Well, the Australian Tourism Export Council grew out of ITOA some 30 years ago. And so it's amazing to see an organisation that's lasted so long in an industry that's so important to Australia. I'm here with John King, who's the chairman of the Australian Tourism Export Council. So, John, looks a fantastic event that you guys have organised here. But tell me a bit about the context of ATEC and what your objectives and what you're trying to do with ATEC at the moment.
Well, I guess our focus is twofold. One is that we're here to provide networking opportunities for our members, and that's very important in terms of developing tourism for Australia, because we've got around in excess of 170 inbound tour operators, and most of the rest of our members are suppliers of tourism product. So the interaction and the networking between the two is important to be able to put together marketable tourism product and experiences and to distribute that around the world. We also have a very important role with our members of providing business insights, of being able to provide business support. And I guess then part of our external role is then trying to ensure that the environment in which they operate is as conducive as possible to the development and maintenance of sustainable tourism businesses.
But how do you do that? Because there's so many people involved in that process.
That involves, again, a fairly broad-ranging thing. It involves a lot of lobbying, both at a national and state level. Because I guess in many respects the inbound tourism industry, more than most other sectors of tourism, is subject to an enormous range of policy issues and policy decisions, whether it's immigration or whether it's trade or well beyond just the immediate confines of the tourism portfolio. And the same thing applies at a state level as well. So we have a very broad remit in terms of lobbying in that regard. But we also then bring into the fold a number of corporate members, people such as major accounting firms, major legal firms, in order to be able to ensure that our members are across the latest issues to do with taxation, business policy, and a whole range of other things that really provide, I guess, the information on which people can run successful businesses.
Yeah. I remember years ago, excuse me, that when I was working, selling Britain overseas and all that sort of stuff, people used to talk about the ministry that we were in. They could never decide, the government could never decide whether we fitted into heritage, tourism, sport, employment and so on. So we ended up being called sort of the Ministry of Fun. Nobody took us seriously. But do you think in Australia at last there's an awakening both on the corporate and on the governmental side about the value of tourism to the economy?
Well, I believe there is, and when you consider, and I think it's significant that we're meeting in Newcastle because Newcastle is a major coal exporting port. And yet when you look at the value of tourism brings more export dollars into Australia than our coal industry. And I think there's an increasing realization of that, and I think as with discussions of global warming and things like that, that more and more politicians and influence leaders are looking for the new economies. And I think tourism is certainly amongst those new economies that we've got to look to.
I think just in terms of the state governments and so on, and not wanting to go down a sort of controversial line, but do you think that the state governments now, I mean the federal government clearly in terms of Tourism Australia seems to be putting money behind, what it's trying to do and so on. Some state governments are, some are less effective. The whole event scenario, because we know if you can secure a big event, then it's multi-million dollars. So how are you influencing those governments, or do you think they're actually coming to the party now or increasingly understanding what's going on?
Well, as you mentioned, I think that some are doing better than others. And we, I guess, continually try to not only put forward facts, try and explain the way that tourism works, try and explain that tourism in many respects is more an outcome than an industry, because it impinges and benefits so many other areas of industry. but also other areas of community and social life.
Yeah.
And so I think we've got to keep banging the drum. And as we mentioned, some have got it, some really haven't as yet.
Now you're in your second term, okay?
Yes.
So, second year of your first term, and so you've got a year to go, and hopefully you'll be re-elected as well. But what's your objective to have achieved? What do you want to say? Well, I really achieved that in ATEC by the end of my term or my first term.
Well, I guess as I mentioned at the outset, we're a very strong membership basis, and most of our a lot of our focus is on the members. And to a certain extent, being such a strongly focused membership organisation is a bit of a two-edged sword. And on the one hand, it's our strength, but on the other hand, it's our weakness, because the demands upon our organisation are increasing. The demand that we take, I guess, a more broadly based leadership role in tourism is increasing, but our resources and our structure have remained pretty much the same as they have for many years. So I guess the legacy I'd like to leave is a more sustainable and perhaps more focused organisation in terms of the role that we play, and that we continue to focus very heavily and in fact totally on the inbound sector and not get too involved in other issues beyond inbound tourism. That's our strength and that's our focus.
Thank you, John. Well, I'm John Alwyn-Jones for Travel Mole TV, reporting from the ATEC Symposium in Newcastle, New South Wales, Australia. And I've been speaking with John King, who's the chairman of the Australian Tourism Export Council. Okay, well, as you know, I'm John Alwyn-Jones and I'm reporting for Travel Mole TV from the ATEC, that's Australian Tourism Export Council, Symposium 2008 in Newcastle, New South Wales, Australia. And I'm with Matt Hingerty. Matt Hingerty is the CEO of ATEC. Tell me just a quick question before we go in. Australian Tourism Export Council. Okay, yeah. But you're not exporting bananas, are you?
No, we're earning export income for Australia. It's the inbound tourism sector, as we all know. It's something I have to explain every day to stakeholders, but in explaining it, they get to understand it, so it's not a
So explain it to us
now. We earn $24 billion a year in export income for Australia, so tourists consume their product here in Australia. They're not like Japanese steel mills that are burning coal in Tokyo. They're actually, the tourists are coming here, paying in foreign exchange, coming to Australia and consuming the products here. The only downside of that is that we attract the GST here in Australia, but that's a big battle that we fought a long time ago and lost, but unfortunately. So we really contribute significantly. We earn the export income for Australia, but also in taxes. We're helping state governments to build hospitals and employ police and nurses and all those good things.
And do you think the state governments have quite grasped that? I mean, and federal government have sort of understood the power and the importance of tourism?
Well, certainly the tourism ministers have, but not all their treasurers have. It's always an uphill battle, and from a state government's point of view, these days, particularly with the ageing population, it's about basic services. It's about health, welfare, education and law and order, and the states are increasingly looking to how that they can move some of their responsibilities across to the private sector, which is great. We welcome that. But the thing is, they have to transfer some of the funds as well. And with that, we can do so much more to innovate into new areas.
But I suppose, like any business, you've got to create income from somewhere, and tourism is a great income earner for Australia because it's the largest employer in Australia?
It's right up there. It's about, to put it in this perspective, it's about 500,000 people, whereas the mining industry directly is probably less than 100,000. So we hear a lot about the wonderful mining industry, and it is a wonderful industry, but in terms of raw employment, tourism employs people from all classes of society and right across Australia. Particularly in remote and regional areas where that employment is much needed.
And also where traditional employment has died off as well, though, in terms of where things have changed. And a very fitting location. We're in Newcastle in New South Wales, and I remember being here when I first came to Australia thinking, this is a heavily industrialised town. So tell us about the setting and how that fits into your vision for ATEC.
This is pretty much it's great that we're here in the Newcastle and the Hunter, because it's a metaphor for where the tourism industry is at the moment. 15 to 20 years ago, Newcastle as an industrial town faced up to the fact that they were losing jobs, industry was becoming increasingly mechanised, but that they also couldn't compete with the new and emerging economies around the world. But what they did was they embraced the future with optimism and innovation and said, we've got to get involved in the services economy, we've got to get involved in tourism, and they went about it in a very optimistic and structured way. And we in the tourism industry in Australia are at a similar crossroads. We're facing enormous global competition from planned economies backed by sovereign wealth funds. We all know about the miracle that's happening in the Middle East, but more in our region, in southern China and Macau and Singapore. The competitive tensions out in the market are growing increasingly.
Yep.
Also, our businesses are struggling with the cost of imports. In Australia, we've been pretty much immune the last few years from inflation, but in the last few years, due to increases in fuel, labour costs, food and beverage inputs, construction costs, business costs for our operators are going up. And what that means is margins are being squeezed, so they have to get out and find and innovate into new areas, innovate new products from Australia, but also chase down new markets. And that's where ATEC will be hopefully driving the industry over the next few years.
Excellent. Well, here we are, sort of in fact, in a very ancient, very old building, which is part of the sort of industrial heritage of Newcastle, but with the new industry on the floor here. So tell us a bit about ATEC Symposium, what you're hoping will be achieved by both the buyers and the suppliers that are here.
Yeah, well, first we hope that they do a lot of business with each other. The basic platform for ATEC, we're not necessarily a lobby group. Our basic reason for being is as a business-to-business networking organisation. And what we're seeing here today at the moment is the inbound tour operators, the Australian wholesalers, if you will, meeting on a sort of a speed dating basis with suppliers and doing business with each other. And this is pretty much one of the best things that we do year round. But also over the next 2 days in the conference element, we'll be talking about the future of the Australian tourism industry. We'll also be talking about the future of ATEC and how the global and national economic impacts are shaping an industry association. Because of the drive to save, to reduce costs, industry associations like ATEC and across the board, across all industry sectors, are being put on their mettle. If you don't supply value to your members, you won't survive.
So in terms of your vision, I mean, you talked about the vision and the discussion's going to take place over the conference. What's your vision for tourism in Australia?
To continue to be one of the most important sustainable contributors to our economy. Importantly, to have the Australian people as one of our optimistic stakeholders going forward. They have been in the past, and we need to retain that, because the taxpayer invests a lot of dollars in the marketing of Australia, and we need to keep them comfortable with the Australian tourism industry, and also to grow and develop this organisation. The other area that I'm really interested in is innovation, in chasing down those new products and new markets. We have a great film called Australia, the Baz Luhrmann film, which is going on the world stage later in the year. We hope that's successful. We hope that gives a marketing platform for some of the new product in Australia, particularly across the northern parts of the continent. But we're looking at other new markets, such as the health tourism market, the global health tourism market, which is expanding at an incredible rate as the world ages. Australia is perfectly catered to suit that market. We just have to do a bit of planning.
1 minute warning. 1 minute.
That's okay. We'll wait.
No,
carry on.
ATEC in action.
This is absolutely Tourism Live.
And also talking a little bit about some of the infrastructure issues that we face. We have a major bottleneck here in Newcastle at the port. We can't get the coal out quick enough. Around this country, we have bottlenecks in tourism as well. We have accommodation capacity constraints. We have aviation capacity constraints. We have to look at new and innovative ways to get around those constraints so we can keep building the export value for Australia.
Excellent. Well, I'm sure we'll talk again during the symposium, and good luck, as they say in show business. Break a leg, and we look forward to a very successful event.
Thanks, John. And can I also say that I'm really grateful for this opportunity to work with Travel Mole, probably one of the world's, the globe's greatest distributor of information in tourism, and it's really great to have this relationship.
Lovely. Thank you very much.